be able to forgive sin. So two definitions of blasphemy. Number one, a man claiming to be God. And number two, a man claiming to be able to forgive sins. So Babylon is a blasphemous woman, a blasphemous spiritual woman, a blasphemous church. So now we need to turn to verse number 4 to get another characteristic of this Babylon. And notice the colors that this woman is wearing. It says the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls. Now this is very interesting because we see these similar colors in the Old Testament as it relates to God's true priesthood. So to see that, let's turn to the book of Exodus. Exodus chapter 28. And we're going to read verse number 5. And again, this is describing the true priesthood, God's true priesthood. They shall take the gold, blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and the fine linen, and they shall make the ephod of gold, blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and fine woven linen, artistically worked. So the woman in Revelation chapter 17, this Babylon, she has all of these colors except one, and that color is blue. So now we need to ask ourselves, what does this blue represent? And for that, we need to turn to the book of Numbers. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers. The book of Numbers, chapter 15. And we're going to read verses 38 and 39. It says, "Speak to the children of Israel. Tell them to make tassels on the corners of their garments throughout their generations, and to put a blue thread in the tassels of the corners. And you shall have the tassel, that you may look upon it and remember all the commandments of the Lord and do them, and that you may not follow the harlotry to which your own heart and your own eyes are inclined." So God told Israel, make blue on the borders of your garments, that this might remind you of the commandments of the Lord. So this woman, Babylon, is missing the blue, and it shows to us that she is a counterfeit priesthood who has no regard for the commandments of God. Let's keep that in mind. Let's turn back to Revelation chapter 17 as we get another characteristic. And that is found in verse number 5. In that this Babylon is the mother of harlots, because it says, mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots. So they're showing that not only is Babylon a harlot, but she also has daughters who have come out of her who are also harlots, who have the same characteristics as this mother. So keep that in mind. In verse number 6, it says that I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. So this Babylon is also a persecuting power. Not only is she unfaithful to Christ, but she persecutes those who are faithful to Christ. This Babylon is a persecuting power. Also, another characteristic regards the beast, or this political kingdom on which the woman sits. We read it in verse number 9. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. So this beast, this political kingdom, has 7 heads which represent 7 mountains. So if we were thinking about a city or a place in the world that is a city of 7 mountains or a city of 7 hills, we know automatically that it's talking about Rome. So this particular false church has its seat, its foundation, its headquarters in Rome. That's a very big identifying characteristic. Let's look at verse number 15 of Revelation 17. Then he said to me, the waters which you saw where the harlot sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. So where Babylon has its headquarters is in a very populated area. because the waters on which the woman sits represents peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. Also in verse number 18, and the woman whom you saw is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. So this woman is Babylon. This woman is confusion. She is the antithesis of confusion. And not only that, it says that she reigns over the kings of the earth. So a lot of times people might have discussions about who rules the world, which kingdom. And a lot of times it's political. But this verse is showing us that this particular Babylon rules over all of the kings of the world. So above all the kings sits this spiritual entity, this spiritual Babylon. So in the end, it's always coming down to spiritual entities. And we must remember that Lucifer in heaven said, I will be like God. So he has to be worshiped. So he has set up a false system of worship here on this earth. So from all these characteristics, it is easy to see that this Babylon represents the church state of Rome. And it would be good for me to say that I am not talking about people, neither is the Bible talking about people. The Bible is talking about false systems of worship, not people. So let's separate the two. It is talking about the false system of Rome, this Roman church state. This is Babylon. So let's go through the characteristics and see the fulfillment of the Roman church state as Babylon. Number one, Babylon the great whore. This Roman church state, of course, is not faithful to Christ, and so it fulfills that particular characteristic. Number two, it has worldwide influence, which Babylon does, which the Roman church state does. She is a spiritual and a political entity. Of course, the spiritual being the church part, and the political being that it is now located in the Vatican, and the Vatican is its own country. Originally, it was, of course, located in Rome. That's why it's known as the Roman Catholic Church, or the Church of Rome. It only recently started to have its headquarters in the Vatican. A blasphemous woman. Of course, it is claimed that the Pope is God, or God's representative on earth. And of course, we know that this is not the case, so that is the first definition of blasphemy. A man claiming to be God. And it also claims that the priests can also forgive sins. And that is the second definition of blasphemy. A man claiming to be able to forgive sins. It fulfills that particular characteristics of being a blasphemous woman. Also a counterfeit priesthood. Because it lacks the commandments of God. They do not adhere to the commandments of God. And also in their 10 commandments of this particular church, they take out one of the original commandments of God that relates to idol worship, because idol worship is very big in this spiritual Babylon. So it has no regard for the commandments of God. Another one, it says the mother of harlots. As you might know if you know church history, is that many churches have come out of this Roman system. And coming out of her, they still adhere to some of her doctrines. And we're going to see one of those big doctrines that derived and came out of this Roman system that is now being adhered to by many quote-unquote Christian bodies today. Also, persecuting power. If you know about the Dark Ages, you know that this Roman system persecuted tens of millions of people. Historians put the number during the Dark Ages of the people who lost their lives from this Roman system between 50 to 100 million people. So indeed, Rome, or this Babylon, is a persecuting power. Of course, she has always had her headquarters until recently in the land of Seven Hills, which is, of course, Rome. She commands a vast amount of people. She is the antithesis of Babylon. She is Babylon. She is confusion. And the last characteristics being that she rules over the kings of this earth. And if you doubt this last characteristic, you only need to think back just a couple of years to the death of Pope John Paul. When he died, everybody that was anybody in this world attended his funeral, whether they be kings or princes or prime ministers or heads of religious bodies or even presidents or past presidents. They were there